Hey everybody, welcome to the episode of the Geek Bytes podcast. This is episode number 154 for the show. I'm Ramon Mejia.
I'm Edgardo Acosta.
And one of us is awake, one of us isn't.
But a little sick.
Every single week on the podcast, we're bringing you the roundup of the week's best geek and tech news. We'll discuss that news and, of course, anything else we happen to be interested in that week. And this week in geek news, we're talking about some great stuff, including
the self-driving car that crashed and killed a person. I'm calling it a hate crime. The guy jailed for teaching his dog to love Hitler. I mean, hail Hitler. The Atari console, comic book news, the movie trailer showdown, and much more.
So, of course, we begin our show, though, with geek news. Probably update that graphic. And we begin the geek news with the very first recorded incident of a self-driving car collision that resulted in a fatality. This is kind of a big thing for this particular industry because people have been kind of dreading to see what the results are going to be, whether the public is going to outcry against self-driving cars as murder machines, if all those hidden fears about, AI is coming and murdering us all are going to come up. But it's been a very interesting situation that's developed over the course of the entire week now. The original situation was that earlier this week, an Uber self-driving car stuck a woman who was 49 years old named Elaine Herzberg. She was crossing the street in Tempe, Arizona. At first, people were just really weirded out by this happening because self-driving cars are supposed to be better than this. This week, the police also released the video footage for this particular incident that was taken from that particular vehicle, which includes both the outward-facing camera that shows what happened on the street, but also the inward-facing footage of what the driver was doing. We'll watch that. We're pulling this from the ABC clip version, but you can still kind of see exactly what's happening in this particular video. You see the car's driving, and then bam, there's the lady.
So bad, not a proper intersection.
And there's other footage where it shows the lady flying off a little bit, and then it flips to, of course, the inside version. I don't know. I'm honestly curious.
Shim.
This shows the person looking down, looking up, looking down, and then, oh my gosh. And then that was kind of it. So just according to the video footage, the police chief in Tempe, Arizona basically says, I don't suspect preliminary it will be Uber that takes fault for the incident. The lady came out from the shadows right in the roadway. It would have been difficult to avoid this collision in any kind of mode. But again, that's but the preliminary report. It's not the official final word on the whole situation. Now, in a twist, competing car companies who develop similar technology had basically come out and said that Google has issues, that Uber has issues, and that their versions of their Waymo...
We won't kill you.
Yeah, just our car wouldn't have killed her at all. And they've actually cited statistics saying that their vehicles, over the course of an average of 5,600 miles, average those many miles before they need some kind of driver intervention. It means that the driver has to do something to avoid whatever. It says that, however, in Uber, it's struggling to even make 13 miles before a driver has to intervene in some way. And the New York Times even has documented documents from various companies kind of citing the same statistical information in that Uber seems to be struggling in getting these particular vehicles to be as efficient as other companies. Of course, this may, just be this gigantic PR move for the other companies in saying this, but the fact that this lady did die and it was in the hands or the wheels of a self-driving vehicle is kind of a big deal.
Who are you kidding, man? You seen Terminator 2?
Yep.
It's Skynet in the action, man. The machines drove first blood.
They did.
It's happening.
They drew first blood. But even just looking at that video footage, it's I don't think I could have stopped in time either. We're looking at the still footage.
Honestly, it's no different than the whole deer in the headlights kind of deal.
Yeah, this lady's crossing the street in the very dark spot. I'm not saying it's her fault, but
not wearing anything reflective.
She could see a person. She could see the car coming, and she was still crossing the street, I guess, hoping that she wouldn't get hit.
I see no intersection, no crosswalk, no lights, no nothing.
Yeah, in this particular spot, and if you look at the video footage, as the car is coming up, it passes a crosswalk, that's earlier. It's just the lady didn't choose to take that spot, and so she crossed in the very dark area. Where pedestrians, I guess, technically have a right, but it's a highway, so it's 68 miles per hour.
Yeah,
is the speed limit there?
No. So, a 1,000-pound machine going at that fast, how you expect it to stop on a dime? I don't care how good your brakes or your tires are.
The driver was oh my gosh, I'm scared, and I don't think the driver did anything to stop it. The vehicle still stopped itself. It's just the lady was kind of too late, and she died from her injuries later on. But it is also one of those things where people are crying that self-driving vehicles should be better, that this incident shouldn't happen. And relative to all the other self-driving vehicles on the road, it is rare still that this occurs at all. But people are also pointing the fact that self-driving vehicles should have technology that lets them see through the dark, essentially LiDAR, radar, other instruments that are not light dependent. So the fact that it is a dark area shouldn't necessarily have prohibited the vehicle from actually stopping or like recognizing that there is a person coming up. So that is the other side of the argument. But again, developing story, and I'm kind of personally just kind of curious to see where it lands, whether Uber is held liable for this at the end of the day.
Well, I wonder if she have any family members, because for a fact they're going to try to sue
I
the
don't
hell
think
out
she
of
did.
them.
Yeah, I think she was
transient?
Yeah. Whether I thought that's true, I'm not sure actually. I remember hearing something vaguely along those lines.
Yeah, because once again, she knew better. There's been a lot of incidents where, especially some cars try to avoid hitting. Even if it wasn't
a self-driving car, if it was like a regular car accident, I don't know that driver would have been held at fault, because again, it's kind of in a dark area. And, just because you have the right of way, technically, if the driver can't see you, it's hard for them to enforce that.
Yeah, because sometimes I was hearing that, especially to avoid an incident or an accident with even like a large animal, like you hear about these stories about people hitting deers and dogs and whatever in the dark. Sometimes it's easier to take out a deer than it is to try to slam on the brakes and not cause a accident right behind you if there was any cars behind.
Right. No, we don't know if that's the case or not. There were no reports of pileups behind the vehicle. It seemed like it was on the road by itself in a semi-remote area in Tempe, Arizona, which is why they do these testings in these more rural areas, to limit the possibility of larger issues. So on to other news. In the geek world, we have the Hail Hitler dog. A Scottish YouTube comedian, Mark Meechan, has been found guilty of a hate crime Tuesday for posting a video of himself training his girlfriend's pug, Buddha, to mimic a Nazi and to respond to commands the court ruled anti-Semitic. The video from April 2016, Buddha is shown watching Adolf Hitler speaking at a rally at the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin. The dog is shown raising his paw at the command of Sieg Heil, and becoming alert every time Meechan says, "Gas the Jews."
Wow.
Yeah. A trick Meechan demonstrates 12 times in the video. Meechan, whose YouTube account's name is Count Dankula, praises Buddha in the video saying, "Who's a good wee Nazi?" At the end of the video, which is still up on YouTube, it's in restricted mode, and Meechan in court said that he wasn't racist, that he was just trying to piss off his girlfriend. And so that's most of the story. This is essentially, he says it's a joke. He says that it was, and that's his defense basically, to teaching his dog to be racist. I'm
going to be honest. I get the humor in it. Especially if it's a you got your YouTube thing for
Dogs
just you and your girlfriend and your dog. Yeah. But once you post it online, everybody's gonna, oh my god! But it's not like he dressed him up in his little uniform with a little Nazi propaganda armband and his little mustache.
Would it have really have mattered if he did?
It'd have been adorable.
It still would have been a joke, right? I mean, and there are several viewpoints on this particular situation. A lot of Americans are outcrying, saying that's freedom of speech. You're not supposed to ban that, and that's definitely something that's in this country. This is not happening in the United States. This is happening in Scotland, and according to the laws of, I want to say they're part of the British Empire. I don't remember specifically for their independent country. Don't get mad at me, folks, in the internet. I don't. Yeah. I'm American. Geography is not our strong suit. But basically, this is another country with different laws according to their particular viewpoints on the world, and they found it to be anti-Semitic speech, which makes it essentially a hate crime, and that's what he's being charged with. Whether I agree with that, well, the human, the dog would have been put down if that was the case, I guess, but he's been found non-compliant or not an issue. But a lot of Americans, a lot of other people, of course, are saying that this man essentially is being jailed and fined for making a joke. And so that's their point of view on that. Should jokes, even if they're in bad taste or essentially racist, and this is, nobody's saying it's not, should somebody be put in jail or even charged with a fine necessarily.
That's the extreme route, to be honest. Worst case scenario, take the dog away.
Well, yeah, it's not his; it's the girlfriend. I don't think he would have cared either way.
Break up with him.
I think they're saying that at most he might get like a year in jail for this particular crime at the most. Again, it is essentially considered hate speech, anti-Semitic speech, and that is a crime. And if it is just general anti-Semitic hate speech, I don't think people have an issue with that. I really don't. Like he was just protesting down the street, saying "gas the Jews," even if the dog was with them, hailing. I don't think people would have an issue with it. But the fact that it's on YouTube, and essentially it's a stupid joke,
stupid Patrick,
and nobody doubts that it's not stupid, especially if you're filming yourself and putting on the internet to get internet views.
Because it is
that makes it different because it's a much wider audience. And a lot of people recognize, this is just him being an idiot gagster.
Yeah, like okay, that's the total humor. Have you ever seen both the Broadway show and the movie adaptation of The Producers?
Yeah.
Remember the whole like Springtime for Hitler, where there was one time where he had a row of pigeons, and one was named Adolf, and it did the little salute and everything. He even had the little kind of comb over hair and all that.
Right now, and there's definitely precedent for this kind of humor when it's being done sarcastically.
Like satire.
This is not satire though. This is very much this guy's just being a douche in training his girlfriend's dog to do something naughty, and he finds it hilarious. And other people think so as well. And on some level, I guess I agree with them. Like teaching children to curse and teaching dogs to do things to weird symbols is a certain level of humor. And I think I think it's too far to jail. I'm like, maybe fine him. In this, but
cancel his count, take away his toys.
Intent kind of matters in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And in this particular court case, they found that a reasonable person would not essentially find this funny, and the court judge was very clear. And he basically said that I don't see any circumstance in which this would be considered humorous. He's like, I'm Jewish, and teaching your dog to salute at gas the Jews is just not funny to me, and I can't see somebody else. So it's very much an interpretive point of view, and of course the guy can still what's called appeal the decision, hopefully.
Especially if you're a comedian, you got to add some more to it, man.
Yeah,
you got to add like a rim shot or something to let them know that it's a joke.
Yeah, and again, this guy's a YouTube personality, so I'm like, it's kind of the thing that he does to get views, and there are plenty of people who say intentionally controversial stuff to get views on YouTube and the internet, and this one is just somebody who's just caught kind of broke a law, either intentionally or unintentionally, and he's kind of paying the price for it. Still, that is the internet news. Onto some other stories. We have Atari. You thought it was dead. Maybe it is. We'll have to wait and see. But Atari apparently has been showing off a new console that they plan to bring out at the game developer conference in San Francisco this past week, where 25,000 developers gathered to kind of conference and do communal things and hopefully probably drink a lot. But the Atari machine, which was exclusively revealed to Game Meets, I think a couple years ago or last year, claims that they're taking inspiration from 40 years of gaming history. Now, I should be clear, this is not the exact Atari company that is the original one. This company has been bought out several times, and so this is kind of just the revamped version of this company. This was originally actually a Kickstarter project, and the development team canceled the crowdfunding campaign because of some snag, apparently. But this latest design is a blend of modern lines, classic details, and the designers hope to evoke positive reactions from Atari fans. Are there still Atari fans? I mean, I think there are people who are retro fans and who remember it nicely, but I don't think people are jonesing for Atari games.
No, because if you consider the first version of Atari, it was literally how many bits?
Yeah, it was one of the first home consoles, and it didn't. It basically, for its time and its time slot, it did relatively well, but it was still kind of an expensive machine for crap graphics, especially when you can go to the arcade and get something better. It was kind of in the line of home computing, of like, oh, this is something kind of cool. Yeah. Back to the story. Sorry. Basically, the new Atari design is pulling stuff from 70s and 80s history, and there were no details about pricing, components, or anything else. But the people in the know say it should be priced at $200 or $300, including an Intel-based processor running Linux, and says that they're combining past Atari games, but also connecting to today's living room company. today's living room. So I think it's supposed to be more than just like a retro box. More like the Sega Genesis, the Nintendo NES have gotten like miniaturized versions of their systems where they basically front loaded with a bunch of games. I think this is supposed to do that, but also be maybe something more, which they haven't revealed. And for $250 to $300, I would hope it's a lot more than that.
No, because the Atari Retro Box, it exists. It's out right now. You could probably cough up maybe $20-$30.
Yeah, and you look at the pictures, you see it's a console.
Yeah.
It definitely like harkens back to the old Atari games, just without the slots for the cartridges. But it also comes with a regular style Xbox controller and then a joystick, which I'm not sure anybody was asking for.
No, because that's the other thing. Even on Atari came out with their own little plug and play version, which everything, all the games and everything was in the joystick. So, and especially once again, it was like, I don't know, 8-bit, if not less than graphics. So you had like, you could stick a ridiculous amount of them literally in your fingertip. But same thing, you could make your phone into a PlayStation system. Do you remember they tried to do another Reborn? Do you remember the Atari Jaguar?
I do not at all, actually. Was this like some new console they were coming out with? Or?
Yeah, they were trying to make another comeback for Atari, trying to compete with PlayStation and Dreamcast at the time.
Yeah, no, Atari is just kind of an old brand name that they're trying to rely on, like, nostalgia-based kind of stuff. And guess that's cool, but it's like, I don't know that anybody was really asking for this, but at the same time, they had at least Kickstarter money from people, so there's somebody who thinks that this is going to be a thing and they're developing, but to me, the lack of details, the lack of like footage from like actual maybe new games, kind of makes the price point of $250 to $300 seem absolutely outrageous. But I'll wait for final judgment until I actually see a thing. But this feels a lot like vaporware. It feels like vapor tech, where it's like, oh, here's our fancy thing, give us money for development, and then at some point they're just going to stop or something.
If you want to go retro Atari, get the plug and play. You could actually get those greatest hit compilations on any system, and you can even download it in worst case scenario, emulate.
Yeah, emulators are fun, and honestly, there's plenty of emulators that'll handle the 8-bit graphics of your Atari games. If you want to, you just be frustrated by bad graphics and
playing Miss Pac-Man or the old Space Invaders
or E.T. and just like feel weird. Okay, so that's a lot of the video game and technology news. We're moving on to some entertainment stuff, which is going to be kind of fun. Black Panther has been doing amazing. Like we've been talking about it for week after week, how many records they're breaking. They broke another one this week. They basically outdid the original Avengers and being the highest grossing movie in North America, topping out recently at $624 million for the North American continent, which beats out the Avengers, which made $623.4 million. And so they're still would have only 7 movies apparently to have made more than $600 million domestically in the United States. So good for them. And it kind of shows that there's definitely a market for this particular kind of powerfully driven ethnic film, essentially. And that Hollywood it's kind of they're scrambling to kind of make the most of this. Yeah. I don't think many people realize exactly how big it was going to be. And we've been talking like, we kind of got it. We're brown. We understand that particular desire and appreciation of like this kind of cultural story. And producers probably didn't bank as much. And so they didn't have Black Panther 2 scheduled yet. And they most recently just like, approved it. And they're probably doing storyboarding right now for it. But to me, like, this is great. I like it.
It hit actually $1 billion worldwide. Yep. So it's up there. It's one of the top, I think it was like the top 10, if not top 6 greatest domestic movie making money cash cow. Yep. It's just ridiculous in a good way. Totally good way. I can't wait till what they're going to do with the sequel. You're going to get a little bit of a teaser with Infinity War.
Yeah, we're seeing the Nation of Wakanda being a big part of Infinity War. And speaking of Infinity War, we apparently have some conflicting reports from the producers there. According to the Russo brothers, they recently said that Carol Danvers is going to be in the Avengers Infinity War movie, which is kind of in conflict to what they said last week. If I recall, we reported on that saying that, they said that, Carol Danvers' costume was one of the ones that they cut out because she got cut out of the film. And now they're saying, oh no, she's one of the most interesting characters in the movie. At this point, I think they're just kind of messing with us.
Just to get you to watch it.
Yeah. They're like, oh, is she in it? Is she isn't?
The only way you'll know is you come give us your money and watch the movie.
That's the only reason we're going to come, apparently, is to see if Captain Marvel shows up in the film. Now, it could always be the case that Carol Danvers shows up on her own, not as Captain Marvel.
Just
or maybe,
walking by, hey, that's it, cameo.
Yeah. Or like maybe she just does some interesting, like, where she's like impact, like where she works or something. There's some impact there, and she has to decide whether or not to come out in the movie, and maybe she'll show up in Captain Marvel or as Captain Marvel in the Avengers movie number 4, which would definitely split this up. Like, Avengers Infinity War, Captain Marvel movie, and then Avengers 4, in which case she could show up, full hog, and people will understand what her character is. That could definitely be the case as well.
I want to see what it's going to work out, but right now there's been a lot of gambling on who's going to be in there, who's not going to be in there, who's going to get the most screen time,
and who's going to die.
That's the other thing.
That's the big one. And speaking of which, people are speculating that Captain America is actually going to die in this film, or in Avengers 4, one or the other. And that's mostly because the guy who plays Chris Evans is apparently retiring from Captain America after Avengers 4. He basically said this week in a profile appearing in the New York Times that he will be suiting up for the last time when they do the reshoots for the Avengers 4, which is not that finished yet. He said, you want to get off the train before they push you off. So he's retiring. I mean, basically his contract finished before Infinity Wars, if I'm not mistaken. And so he technically doesn't have to do that film or, Avengers 4. But he's finished. And, hopefully we'll see him at some other point, or they'll make new contracts. But they could also just kill him off, and then somebody else can be Captain America, as happened in the comic books.
Mm-hmm. There was, of course, Falcon in the comic books becomes Captain America.
So
Bucky
for a short time. The Punisher did as well in the Civil War, in the second Civil War in Marvel. There've been several characters, including I think a woman at one point. I think there's also the speculation that a woman is going to take the role of Captain America for some reason.
That'd be cool.
I don't have a problem with it. But, Steve Rogers is definitely always going to be classic Captain America that most people recognize and from the movies and from the comic books as far as they recall.
So pretty much Robert Downey Jr. is still cashing in that Iron Man.
Oh, yeah, as long as he can.
As long as they can film his head in that black shadow box.
He doesn't have to do anything else for the rest of his life, and he can command amazing numbers because he is Tony Stark at this point. Like, he's absolutely recognizable to kids more as like, oh, that's Tony Stark. More than himself. Yeah. But so hopefully we'll get to see those movies coming away with Infinity Wars, which premieres April 27th. Not really that far. March, April.
Coming up.
That's it. It's literally about a month from now. And then Avengers 4, which is supposed to come out on May 3rd, 2019. So about a year or so from now. So there you go. Okay. On to our next story. We have, do you remember that lady from Thor Ragnarok?
Yes.
She's apparently going to show up with Chris Hemsworth in a reboot of Men in Black. Yeah, that's
reboot.
That's the face I made too. Like or maybe not a reboot. Yeah, it says it's a reboot. It could just be like a new movie sequel of it as well.
Okay.
They kind of confuse the terms occasionally. But this is going to be a new Men in Black movie without Will Smith, without anybody from the original cast, and they're putting Chris Hemsworth with the lady from there. Her name is something Tessa Thompson. She was Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok, and apparently their chemistry was good enough that they're going to put them in a buddy cop alien film. Supposed to release in June of 2019.
So which one do you think is going to be the Will Smith out of the two?
Chris Hemsworth. Or he can play the funny role.
Yeah, I can see that. Especially she was pretty serious in Thor Ragnarok.
So. Yeah, she's nice. I mean, she's like very nice. Humor. Yeah, dry character, I should say. And Chris Hemsworth has definitely been known more recently for his humor is goofiness in the last few Thor movies. So I think, we don't actually know any details about the script, but assuming the same kind of character roles for Men in Black, that would kind of be the obvious pairing to me.
The movies did pretty well, so I could see that coming out. There was no tie that it has to be these characters.
No, you could totally do something entirely different. They could both be agents just going on alien hunting space adventures, and I think that would be fun. I mean, there was a whole animated series from Random Mouse that I really loved. I
awesome.
thought it was the third and fourth movies, definitely.
Yeah, the
Not as good
animation
as the first
style
one, but
was cool. It was very like Eon Flux style.
very sharp curves, lines with weird turns to them, but very like sharp edged, kind of animation. And it was really good animation, and the adventures that they went on were made very interesting sense. They were good plot arcs, really good, monster of the week kind of stuff, which kind of plays in the franchise. Speaking of monsters, we have information, or this is technically a rumor about Venom and that particular movie. A lot of people were disappointed with the first teaser for Venom. It barely had the character in there. It had some weird lines. There was an ooze ball, and that was kind of it. A new rumor has been circulating on the internet that the film won't actually include the full black symbiote suit at all. According to Manabite, the plot breakdown allegedly reveals that the symbiote would only show itself through the black veins on Eddie Brock's body, but it won't actually form a full suit until the very end of the movie. The symbiote will make additional arms and even a shield during a car chase, but the signature look of Venom will only manifest when Brock goes up against another symbiote user. So if that is true, that is gonna suck, because
This is a hell of a tease.
yeah, most of us we're kind of looking forward to like the full on sharp tooth Venom kind of look that we didn't have really from Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Like that full bulky, like real Venom look. So we'll have to wait and see that if it's actually going to be that way or if it's going to be something else. But from that teaser trailer, it might actually be the case. Like a lot of it might be like kind of the prequel to like a real Venom character, and that if this is going to be like a multi franchise film, a duology or a trilogy, I guess that kind of makes sense. But if you don't really show a majority of the character, like I don't see that people will show up for 2 and 3 if that's the case. If this is just essentially an alien abduction or kind of an alienish movie, that's not really as exciting as like an actual Venom film.
Yeah, I want to see that whole action. Like I said, I want to see the tongue,
Yep.
teeth, slobber, the logo, see how they pull off, see how close it would get to the comic book character. Mm-hmm. But with the whole veins and all that, it's just hard. It's like, really? You're going to do that too?
Yeah. And I mean, if it was part of the movie, I don't have an issue, but like, I want to see Venom. That's kind of why I'm coming. I'm not coming to see Blob Man.
I'm going to go the route of racism. They don't want a black suit on a white man.
There you go. Okay, last bit of news from the geekdom world. Apparently there's going to be a comic release of a new kind of parallel universe Power Rangers thing. And there was actually a very interesting trailer for it, including the storyline is essentially, I'll read that first, because there's a commercial before this one.
But Mr. Tommy Oliver, well, actually he's going by Draken.
Yeah, the storyline is basically from the folks of Boom and Studio and Saban Brands. They're releasing a live-action trailer, which we're going to share in a minute, for the upcoming Power Rangers Shattered Grid comic book adventure featuring Jason David Frank, the original Green Power Ranger actor, as villain Lord Draken. Draken comes from an alternate dimension where instead of joining the Power Rangers, Tommy Oliver remained an evil agent of Rita Repulsa. Shattered Grid sees him seeking out the Morphin Grid itself as part of a plan that threatens the existence of every Power Ranger ever. The story plays out across Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, there's the artists, Kyle Higgins, Daniel Dean, Nuko, Saban's Power Rangers, etc. But basically this is kind of a parallel universe where Tommy was still the Green Ranger, and he became evil, and he conquered an entire dimension. And then he looks out across this dimension's Power Rangers and all the different Rangers, and he decides to come conquer our dimension because he already beat up his. And then that's a lot of what this trailer is there's a lot of nostalgia base to it, which I thought was kind of honestly cool, because it harkens back to not like because there have been Power Rangers. There have been dozens and dozens of like Power Ranger television shows with any kind of combination you can think of. In Japan, there were even like combinations of them where they all show up at once. So there's literally like 100 people on that screen. But this one definitely focuses on the American version of the first iteration of the Power Rangers. So it's definitely playing into that nostalgia base for people who grew up with the original versions, like us, basically. Mm. And you basically see Tommy looking at them and his alternative history where he was a good guy. And he basically says, oh, you guys wasted your opportunity there. You could have become gods. And he's sends the call to go conquer everybody, and you see other Power Rangers in his version of reality, essentially as like over muscled, over like armored servants.
Yeah, he's pretty much a combination of the White Ranger and the Dragon and the Green Ranger fused together. There's been some people did the costumes other than, of course, Tommy Rocket and right there. He's pretty much the Thanos or the dark side of that dimension.
Sure.
Where he's like going to, pretty much go to any other dimension, take out those Rangers. So he's like the only one. Yeah,
and if you look at like there are tons of little teasers about all the different parts of various Power Rangers throughout the very long franchise. Like these are trophies from conquered enemies basically, and there are lots of like cool little details like that in like even just like this little trailer for essentially what is a comic books run of a particular storyline. But even for me, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And if you look online for some of the earlier portions that lead up to this particular arc, it's interesting that they'll tell the story of like, oh, how alternate reality Tommy turned evil and how he stayed evil and how he shattered how he conquered his own dimension. That's part of like the backstory in the comic series. I just thought it was kind of fun.
Oh yeah. Everybody's saying like, is this going to be a movie? Is this going to be
I hoped it was. But I read it up and I'm like, oh, it's a comic book series. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Because this is such a cool storyline. And we've seen like darker versions of the Power Rangers as trailers before.
Oh, yeah.
Even like small mini movies that I thought, oh, this would have been amazing. I would absolutely go watch this in a theater if that was that movie and it had all the original actors. I would absolutely go and watch it personally, or like rented it or bought it on video on demand or something. Yeah. But as a comic, I'm like, oh, okay, that's still very consumable. And even the shot we're showing you now, like Tommy essentially with like a cracked Red Skull helmet in his hand, I'm like, oh, that's still kind of dark.
Yeah, it's gonna sell books for sure. Yeah. And if with enough pressure, he's able to do it. He could don the any kind of Ranger outfit he wanted to.
And just in different, he's definitely been milking the Green Power Ranger role at multiple locations. He showed up in multiple other like Power Ranger series, time and time again as like the Green Ranger coming back, or as the leader of the new Rangers, or as kind of a Zordon role of a mentor, or whatever the case is. But he's making the most of it. So good for him.
Yeah, totally. I can't wait. If I don't pick up the book, I'm gonna go find it somewhere. And
I'm sure you can download it on Kamikaze or something, or some internet app with the comics, and you can read it on your phone. But it looks definitely interesting. So there you go. Okay, on to our movie trailer showdown, folks, and that'll end the show. We have 4 trailers just for you, folks, including Deadpool 2, The Spy Who Dumped Me, Won't You Be My Neighbor, and Night Flyers. Very interesting and very different trailers, by the way. Of course, we're going to begin with Deadpool 2, and of course, we can't play sound for you guys because that's when we get deemed for copyright infringement because this is technically someone else's video. So sorry, but it's a very interesting trailer. I have to say, one of the more memorable ones of a comic franchise, and definitely plays in the Deadpool fun of like, oh, nostalgic music, funny bits, some graphic decapitation, a lot of it. But even going past that, there's like influences from like the not X-Files, the X-Force. You see a bunch of other characters, and it just looks fun and interesting. And like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch that.
Oh yeah. Did you remember the little teaser trailer that they had for us? Especially he's Ryan Reynolds is on top of any kind of jokes that are going on with pop culture. So especially once they got bought out by Disney, he got like a little Deadpool head on the Woody from Toy Story, a toy outfit, and he had the cable and started playing pew 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 pew.
Yeah, but from the trailer, it actually looks like Josh Brolin and Deadpool are going to be enemies. At least at the beginning of this particular movie. It looks like Cable's coming back to change history and kill some kid who's a mutant. And Deadpool is there to rescue or save him or something.
I'm just glad he's a little fat boy with powers instead of just how to be some kind of
cool looking hero. Yeah.
And of course, for a second, I like those little glimpses that you saw Deadpool in Professor Xavier's chair. Because I thought it was Xavier for a second because I just saw like Skinhead and all that, but it's Deadpool.
Yeah, and you see a bunch of characters that people are naming and trying to figure out who they are, especially in this particular scene when they're coming off the plane. You
got Warpath, Domino, Shatterstar. It looks like they mix a couple people there, so it's just joke after joke after joke. Though it's just, and it looks like at least from that angle, from that shot earlier, he's wearing his stealth suit. So for the people that are into the comics and know the cartoons and all that, they're definitely going to be interested to check it out. And which with me, X-Force is awesome. I just want to see how much more of the X-Men characters are on it, because you're going to see Colossus back, and
he's probably the only main character that you're going to see from like the X-Men.
Yeah.
Everybody else seems like they're B or C listers, which is fine for the franchise because they're making the most of characters nobody's using at this point. With the exception of Colossus, who's not really a main X-Men character anyways in any of the movies. They're really doing well, I think, with what they have, because getting licensing deals for all those other characters is super, super hard, and it's a bunch of like wiggle war, because remember, some other company actually owns those characters as mutants. So it's interesting to see what they do with it. Next trailer is going to be The Spy Who Dumped Me, with Mila Kunis, and it'll show up eventually after the commercial break, apparently. There you go. So The Spy Who Dumped Me starring Mila Kunis, who's a spy with that other lady from SNL. Yeah,
the Ghostbusters. Can't think of her name, but yeah, it's interesting. Honestly, Mila Kunis, to me, she looks like a just dark-haired version of Christina Applegate. She has those weird, funky, like not enough sleep eyes. Or something.
No, she's getting older. Like what is she, like in her mid-30s now? And so it's going to be harder for her to do those like cutesy little roles anymore. That's why she's been playing moms a lot recently.
Yeah, bad moms.
And I'm like, that's fine. It's just they're also trying to play like maybe some sex appeal here and some like female James Bondish. Like you listen to the music, they're definitely playing like the James Bond kind of music.
Yeah.
I have to swallow it before they come out.
It's all the jokes on it though, but it's like it's pretty much like her character from Bad Moms and all that, but now it's like a spy related
thing. Yeah, and I figure by the end, she's a badass spy who's able to take out whoever she wants. Yeah. And there's of course the comedy relief from the other lady. I'm like, I'm like, okay, I guess there's an audience for this. I'm hesitant to say how funny it's going to be. It kind of depends on how it's developed, obviously, but that's the case with any movie. And I hope that it is entertaining. I'll probably watch it with my wife. I won't watch it alone, but I'll watch it I'll bring my wife,
Yeah, I almost got to feel like it would have been one of those straight to DVD kind of movies.
Possibly. Next one is going to be Won't You Be My Neighbor, the official trailer for the documentary on Mr. Rogers. And it does like, there's this whole like backstory, even in like the trailer of like where it came from, what his vision was for this particular television series, which started out, the entire thing was kind of like janky. Like the sets were really simple, not a lot of production value, but it worked. And that's kind of what they talk about, like how big of an impact such a simple show that emphasized love and acceptance, but also didn't steer clear of controversial topics that are part of like the time frame, like racism and in the Vietnam War, and things they said in the trailer. Like there was a whole week about like death and like what does assassination mean? Said one of the puppets ladies, and talking about divorce and a bunch of that's like controversial to talk about now. Like you don't see television shows talking about divorce or racism, and so it's like it had an impact, and it was very radical apparently, but it couched itself as like this simple kids show, and it was interesting, and I guess it had a major impact for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to check out the documentary on it, because what I loved more is it was like the equivalent to the Chuck Norris jokes of Mr. Rogers' past. A lot of people, one of the jokes thought he was a Vietnam sniper specialist, that he had like so many kills, and he was just that good that he couldn't break character, he couldn't break his personality. So he was just like, "Hey neighbor." Headshot.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard those same kind of things about his past was that he was a Vietnam sniper, but he chose a different path for his future in doing this television show. And it's interesting to see all this old footage, because
I didn't know it was that old.
We grew up at the same time, and PBS was a big part of our life because it was free, kind of safe-ish television. Yeah. And so seeing Mr. Roger reruns or seeing him in his older years, maybe not as controversial as he would have been in the 70s or in the 60s. And very interesting thoughts come up here. I'm like, I didn't know that about Steve Rogers, or not Steve Rogers, but Mr. Rogers. That's right. Secretly, he's putting on the Captain America shield when nobody's watching.
No, the greatest thing about him, and hopefully they will show it, is when he actually stood up in front of Congress and kind of like fought, or not necessarily fought, but made a plea of why he wanted the public funding, because it was
the public broadcasting system,
exactly for the television show, because the show wasn't necessarily made for him to make money. He didn't market anything. Nobody was rocking Mr. Roger T-shirts or buying dolls or anything like that. It was just an educational show for kids, because not everybody had access to that.
No, absolutely, and I think that was part of the draw of like, him being so popular, that he had a message and it was very family friendly and like love oriented, and he had an impact. But that was that trailer, and this one is going to be Night Flyers. This is a sci-fi series show. It's based on the property written by George R.R. Martin, where he describes it as a ghost story in space, or like a horror movie in space.
So don't expect Game of Thrones dicks swinging around.
I wouldn't. Well, it's on the Sci-Fi Network, so I guess not.
Space dicks.
Yeah, but maybe some ghost space dicks. I don't know. But it's basically, it seems very creepy, very horror-y.
And they definitely got a budget for it, because there wasn't no cheap, like...
You say George R. R. Martin and the guy who wrote Game of Thrones, they'll give you money. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see how many books it takes him to go through to make this show.
I think this is a short. I think this was either a particular novel. I don't know if this was a whole like series of books. I don't know. Either way, but this is a series.
Yeah, definitely has the alien vibe. But
so good stuff. So sci-fi, and what is it? If it goes on Netflix, I think it might be even more rated R. Yeah. So if that's the case, I would totally be into that.
Show the goods.
Well, just like being an adult horror film is easier. Like rated R is much more gory, much more adult than PG-13 horror.
Of course.
Like that's a much harder scare.
Of course.
Okay, so those are our trailers. We got 4. Which one was the winner for you, man?
Mr. Pool.
Yeah, Deadpool. I didn't think anybody really else had a chance once we saw that one. But the other trailers did look genuinely good.
I'm going to see the Won't You Be My Neighbor for sure. But Deadpool 2 is
Deadpool's the winner. Yeah, absolutely. So there you go, folks. We both chose the same winner, Deadpool 2, based upon like the trailers that came out this week. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you ever have anything you want to comment on the show or make suggestions about like things we should put on that you found was funny, remember you can always contact us at feedback@geekbytespodcast.com. That's our email address, so feel free to send us a message there. Just no spam, please. But that's it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can find all the ways to do so at
geekbytespodcast.com/supports.
There we go, folks. And thanks again for listening, for watching, and for hanging out with us while we talk about some geeky things that we happen to love. For Geek Bytes Podcast, I am Ramon Mejia.
I'm Edgardo Acosta.
And remember, folks, till we can hang out again, remember to go geek out about something. Goodbye, everybody. There you go. All done.
Cool. 4 o'clock on the dot.
43-minute show.
Oh yeah, the thing's today, or at least happening this weekend.
Which thing is that?
WonderCon.
Oh yeah. Everyone has a friend who went to Anaheim for the weekend to go check that out all weekend.
Yeah. Anything good from her?
I